Davy and Kenny, she somehow managed to spoil us and teach us the value of a penny. She sent us letters filled with jokes and candy at college and at camp, and taught us the lesson to never throw away an envelope with an unused stamp. She's hooked on Doc Martin and Downton Abbey. She's a regular Countess of Grantham. She loves a good steak, and before all meals, the motzi is her anthem. She's full of life lessons about love and happiness, and has endless jokes in her stash. When I try to compliment her, she bashfully says, "Honey, you take the credit, I'll take the cash." She's a well-traveled granny, makes tons of friends on the train up to LA. She's a big supporter of prunes, just to make sure everything digests okay. A zest for life, fresh air, and kindness, and an appetite for meals like no other. When asked how she feels about having great grandkids, she says, "Well, I was always a great grandmother." I can't argue with that, Granny Bev. You're one heck of a matriarch. Thank you for your unconditional love and for brightening our world with your spark. Here's hoping at your age I look half as good and have half as much sass. To you, the woman of honor, I say I love you, and here's still 120 years of raising your class.
Invite up Beverly's grandson Aaron to share a few words.
I'll try. Still not working? Still not working.
Hello. Oh, hey. Magic touch. There we go. Granny Bev was the most caring, loving, and devoted grandmother, teacher, and friend to me, JB, Peaches, Jenny, Yos, great-grandmother to Josh, Jonah, and Zoe. So much so that up until very recently, maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, I honestly believed that her primary and possibly sole occupation in life was to be our grandmother. And every day that we weren't together with her, she was just planning or preparing for the next time we would be together. Excuse me. Seeing all of you here today, it's obviously not true. Beverly played many important roles in many different people's lives. But she was so omnipresent in our lives from day one, all the way up until this past Sunday. It'll get better, I promise. Even from a lengthy distance, you can understand how my siblings and I honestly felt that we alone occupied the inner core of her world. And the photo buttons that covered her heart every day for 30 years only fueled this belief of ours. Excuse me. The hundreds of photos and videos on my home computer conclusively demonstrate that despite living a couple of hours away, Grandma Beverly and Papa Walter were at every one of our birthday parties, every one of our orchestra concerts, recitals, every championship soccer game. There weren't too many of those. And with Granny Bev usually wearing her trademark Birkenstocks. And then there were the frequent sleepovers on Yerba Santa Drive. We'd meet halfway in front of a Nordstrom at Westminster or Mission Viejo shopping mall to make the exchange. Then Sarah would speed away, and we'd grab some chicken nuggets at Carl's Jr. before heading south to meet Walter on the 18th green. But stays with Granny Bev, whether in San Diego or Los Angeles, weren't only fun and games, they were also always educational. We did our homework, if we had any, and practiced our instruments. Hi, can you hold this for me? Thanks. We learned how to make our beds. We learned how to be independent and do things for ourselves. We learned how to make our beds, how to make our own breakfast, how to set the table with drinks and condiments in their designated serving accoutrements. Never a disposable package on the table. We even learned around age 10 to supervise ourselves at large aquatic theme parks and science museums amidst thousands of tourists. On our numerous vacations together, being her roommate was a luxury, as you've heard. From hotels in Midtown to mountain condos at ski resorts all over the western US and Canada, to the captain's suite atop the Reina Silvia, navigating the Galapagos Islands. Granny's room was always the place to be for good snacks, good company, good conversation, and relaxation. Her place at the Seville, with the ocean views she so adored, was no different. Every visitor, whether it was for an hour, a week, or an entire college semester, every visitor felt like a prince in a palace when Beverly was the host. No guest ever arrived at Beverly's home without a personalized welcome sign adorning the entryway. Hospitality came easy to Beverly because, at least from my limited perspective, she was a pretty social person. She loved parties, both hosting and attending, loved chatting with family and friends, loved corresponding and communicating with others. We've often lamented how unfortunate it was, despite numerous attempts and private lessons, that she sort of missed the boat on all the fun social and visual aspects that the internet age has brought to the communications around the world. She would have loved Facebook and Instagram, being able to get updated visuals on the lives of all her family and friends who were so important and dear to her. Granny Bev was a solid character, pretty much as solid, stable, grounded as they come. I wish I'd learned more from her about where that all came from, and I hope I still can. Maybe it had something to do with the half-century she navigated before I entered the picture, but I never witnessed her ever get angry or cross, or even as much as a tad frustrated at all, really. I mean, I interact with little kids a lot, and it's not easy. Either Jake and I were just perfect angels all the time, which may or may not be true, or Granny Bev just knew how to deal with pretty much every situation in a reasonable, level-headed, and constructive manner. Last night when I was reflecting on the life of Beverly Schmier, an image popped into my head. It's an image of a car rear window decal with 2 palm trees. Maybe some of you have seen it, and it says the words, "No bad days." This, to me, exemplifies our grandmother, even until the very last day of her 94 and a half years. We love you, and we'll miss you, Granny.
Finally, we invite up Beverly's son, Ken.
Still wondering when I get my chance to be the favorite. But I can see First of all, I just want to take a moment to thank 2 people and 1 group of people. I want to thank my sister for her devotion in taking care of my mother. She lived in Los Angeles, and my brothers and I found ourselves in Northern California, and my sister really made special efforts, not only on our behalf, but but took care of my mother in the most loving way for so many years and in so many ways. And secondly, I want to thank Karen Schooler, who also brought to my mother in the last 5 years of her life far more than a caregiver. She was a playmate and a daughter and friend, my mother loved you greatly and so enjoyed your company, and you brought so much to her life.
Thank you.
And I also want to thank my nephews and my niece and their spouses and their children, because they all brought so much joy to my mother and not only brought out the best in her, but so entertained her. So thank you. So I'm not going to focus on the stories. I think maybe you'll get to tell the marriage story if you care to. But our mother would often respond to our complaints about our family, our father, or even my mother came up from time to time by saying that resolve now that you will improve upon us in your lives. And that wasn't just a platitude for her. We knew that she had a very difficult childhood. She said that she took care of her mother from the time that from the time she was 6 until the time she was 16. Her mother was always sick. She was not well. She often would get out of bed, so on. She resolved that she was contentious. They had a contentious family. She resolved that none of those things would happen in her life. And as a result, she was never sick. She was never contentious. She was always out of bed and dressed at 8 o'clock in the morning. I think Sarah said that she knew that the end was very near, because the day of her death was the first day she wasn't dressed at 8 o'clock in the morning. She never wasted time. She reached out to everyone. She made friends easily. She visited the sick often. And I think importantly, she never embraced an insecure thought. She always felt that everyone, no matter what they did, had an intention that was as kind as hers were. That's really the way she was. And she was that way not because that was her innate nature. It was because she chose to be that way. It was really an act of will. And I think that led to all sorts of wonderful things in her life. I like to think that if everyone made that same choice, the world to come would be here. Most of our friends thought of our house as a kind of refuge of sanity. Not that it wasn't crazy. It was plenty crazy, but it was kind, and it was loving, and it was warm. I can't remember there ever being a time when there wasn't really genuine and palpable love between our parents. I remember Dad saying to us, when I married Mom, okay, well, they met on a blind date like 10 days later, but anyway, he said, I didn't really realize then just how lucky I was. But he really had the catch of catches. And I remember some very smart men in our neighborhood saying, your mother is the only other woman I could possibly consider marrying. Mom was the model camper. That's really what she was. She was eager to participate in everything. She led the Cub Scout groups for my brothers. She visited she was active in helping out at our school. She spent at least one day every week at the elementary school working in the special needs room. And she was always the first to volunteer, and she never quit or left until the job was done. Not to my knowledge ever. Because today's Halloween, I guess the appropriate thing to do is to say how she was rewarded for all this. She liked to dress for Halloween, to welcome kids to the door. One day a kid comes to the door and says to her, I can tell you're a real witch. And my mother related that she said, how can you tell? And the kid said, because you have so many wrinkles. And I think that illustrates what the reward is in life. That's what we do. My mother loved jokes. And later, maybe I'll tell some of them. But she didn't always understand the jokes that she told. And sometimes I used to say to her, Mother, how can you tell me that joke? And she'd say, why, is that off color? I'd say, Mom, how can it be funny in any other way? And then she'd say, oh, such and such at the golf club is naughty. He should never have told me that. She also had a number of sayings that have guided me my entire life, and I think they're worth repeating. This one is one I have to wrestle with often, but I'm guided by it. If you have to choose between being smart and being kind, choose being kind. Just because you have two nickels to rub together, you have no right to be disrespectful to anyone. No matter how high you rise, you must always know how to sweep a floor. Better to be ready and not go than to go and not be ready. And this one should be taught to all your children, as it happens to be true. If you are dressed and ready, you get to go. I have to tell you, it works for everything, including universities. Okay. Throughout our lives, my mother surrounded us with wonderful people. People of intelligence and integrity and kindness. And now she's outlived most of the people of her generation. But I look out at all of you, and I know that you share our affection for her, and you were the same people, and that was the real privilege. That was the real privilege of growing up with my mother. Basically, wonderful friends like all of you. So how do I sum all of this up? I think there's a Jewish term that helps a lot. I think it can be said that my mother was a Kiddush Hashem. The way she lived, the way she chose to conduct herself, was a real sanctification of God's name, because that was the guiding star by which she lived, and her conduct was such that people always wanted to know what made her the way she was. She was a woman of valor, and she was a Kiddush Hashem. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Two more, because I can't resist. Mentions of your father's courtship of your mom. So it's easy to say, they knew each other for. Imagine 1943 being in a Jewish family of some prominence, that Beverly, who wasn't much more than a kid, would entertain the officers as they came back. Now, it doesn't mean they came, but for a period of time, she would have, dinner after dinner. She would meet somebody at dinner, and on March 10th of 44, fixed up by an aunt and an uncle, she had dinner with the Lieutenant Walter David Schmier. And Michael pulled out a scrapbook yesterday in the house, the apartment. And there's a little notation of where they had dinner and where they met. I believe there's a little comment about how good looking he was. And then there's a note on March 11th that it would be unseemly to see somebody 2 days in a row. And that may be the last day for 50 years that they were apart. Because on March 12th, they went to a show. On March 13th, they went to dinner. I don't have all the details date by date, but on March 19th, there's a ticket from the Pullman Company for a ride from New York to Detroit. On March 10th, there's the issuance of a March 20th, there's the issuance of a marriage license, and on March 21st, there's a wedding picture. Hopefully Michael will pull it out, you can come back to the house. You have to look at this to understand that was a week and a half. And almost 50 years of marriage, never apart. Second piece, not because she doesn't deserve for us to go on for hours, because she does. If anybody does, she does. But generally speaking, when one attends a funeral for somebody of advanced years, and I don't like to draw a line, but 94 and a half counts, one doesn't see very many contemporaries of the person for whom we're gathered. And I've often heard it said that she outlived her friends. And so I'm willing to say that she outlived her contemporaries. But one of the things that's truly, truly a gift of your mother and from your mother, and tied into her joy and her keen insight, her smile, her humor, her incredible ability to treat every single person with love and respect. Whether they were the youngest or the oldest, the wealthiest or the poorest, everybody. But it's true, I don't think any of us could count ourselves amongst Beverly's contemporaries, but I bet you all of us count ourselves amongst her friends. At this time, having shared words of memory and praise, comes a moment to pray on behalf of her neshama, that it should speedily return back to that world, where if it glows as brightly there as it did for 9.5 decades here, then commensurate to our world being much darker, the world above is getting much brighter. If everybody will please rise. O God, full of compassion, who dwells on high, find a place of perfect rest beneath the wings of your presence, along with the rising up of the holiest and the most pure, who shine like the brightest star of the firmament. To our beloved mother, mother-in-law, grandmother, great-grandmother, friend Beverly Schmier, who has gone to her eternal rest. May it be for her as the Garden of Eden. Please, O Master of Mercy, shelter her in the shelter of your wings with no limits, and cause her soul to be bound up in the bond of life. For you are her portion. May she rest in peace. Together we say, Amen. El Malei Rachamim, Shochein Ba'amrovim, Ametzei Menucha Nefena Tachat, כנפי השכינה, במעלות קדושים וטהורים, זוהר הקיע מסעירים, את נשמת בתיה בת חנה ומרדכי, שלחה לעולמה, כגן עדן תהא מנוחתה. אנא בעל רחמים, יסדירך בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתה, אדוני הוא נחלתה, ותנוח בשלום על משכבה, ונאמר אמן. You may be seated.
Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the chapel portion of our service today. From here, we will be proceeding to the gravesite. It's the last lawn on the left as you are exiting the cemetery. We will be going in the hearse out the drive and towards the exit if you wish to follow us. If you feel confident you can make it there yourself, feel free to go on ahead. That concludes our service here. If I could have the pallbearers here with me, please. We encourage everyone to drive there. It is a rather long distance too.